Hello, everyone. My name is Will Carriger. Today we will be discussing the problem with horrendous natural evil. First, we will talk about some key points and thoughts from a wide variety of people on this very topic, to include Dr. Kate Bowler, David Hart, Marcus Aurelius, and C.S. Lewis. Dr. Kate Bowler's article in the New York Times titled Death, the Prosperity Gospel, and Me, and her TED Talk video entitled Everything Happens for a Reason goes into prosperity gospel. Through prosperity gospel, she writes that positive thoughts yield positive circumstances and negative thoughts yield negative circumstances. The reason why people want to believe this is that it's a way to explain natural evil. Another key point to that is that it allows every single person who has this thought process to be able to feel like they can control these outcomes and they can control these events. So if they believe that they think positively, then they're going to get positive actions. So if they think positively about not getting sick or not getting in trouble or not, getting into debt, then those things, then that's what's going to happen. Unfortunately for Dr. Bowler, she received some very alarming news with a medical diagnosis that kind of changes how she changes her perspective. Uh, all of the quote unquote blessed ideology is now shifted to sometimes things just happen. It's not because of some overarching evil, it's just that they happen. One of the things that she talked about experiencing love in these tragic situations and not anger, and realizing that in the darkness, there is beauty and love. Now, moving on to David Hart, his article, Tsunami and Theodicy, some of the key points to take away from this is he writes, it is precisely sin, suffering, and death that blinds us to God's true nature. And while we know that the victory over evil and death has been won, we also we know also uh, that it is a victory yet to come, and that creation, therefore, as Paul says, groans in expectation of the glory that will one day be revealed. As a comfort, we seek it. I can imagine none greater than the happy knowledge that when I see the death of a child, I do not see the face of God, but the face of his enemy. Victory over evil and death. So, natural evil and suffering is not because of God, but it is the enemy of God. Next, we'll look at Marcus Aurelius and remember that the misfortunes of life are a part of nature and nothing natural is evil. So, that's a basic Stoic stance that simply says that if something is natural, it cannot be evil, it just simply is. If the gods made the decision about me and things happen to me, they must have made good ones. Evil is a matter of perception. And then decay, death, and change are all part of nature, so therefore they're not evil. Marcus argues that even events we dislike are necessary in the larger order of things. And then finally, we'll move on to C.S. Lewis. And in the video, C.S. Lewis and the Problems of Pain, we kind of go through the different stages of his life. Early on, his time in the military kind of put him into very dangerous situations, which is why I can understand why one of his perceptions is that we live in a darkened world and cannot see with complete clarity. Um, other other soldiers talk about different things like this. It can be also known as like the fog of war. You're just kind of surrounded by things, and you don't really know what the outcome is until you get past it. Um, then we shift to his wife gets diagnosed with a serious disease, and it adjusts his thoughts and perception. And what we have is that things will become clear without our suffering. So we must be patient and ask what we can learn. So he's basically saying that when it comes to suffering, it's a moment to learn and to reflect, and and that once again, it's one of those things that happens for a reason. Then later on, he himself gets diagnosed with a terminal disease, and he kind of goes through some more stages in his life, not a testing of God, but a testing of oneself, testing and maturing of one's faith. So it's he has the ideology of, yes, this is happening, but this is just another test, a way for me to prove that I'm faithful. And finally, he talks about having hope in the face of death. So here are some points of difference and agreement between that I have noticed between uh, all four of these. So the basic concept that I have seen with all four of them is that they all really, at the very core of it, believe that everything happens for a reason, whether it's through a perception, whether it's through something else. That's where we get more into the differences. But at the absolute basic core of it all, it revolves around everything happening for a reason. If we look at if we go into the differences, if we look at Hart, for example, Hart believes, based on the writings that we talked about earlier, that we don't understand God's true nature and that we're blinded by sin, suffering, and death. And it's not until after it basically is conquered that we'll be able to fully understand why things happen the way that they did. In the later stages of with Dr. Bowler, we come to the realization that sometimes things just happen. They don't happen because we didn't pray enough or because we weren't blessed enough. It's just there are going to be circumstances that 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 just happen. We go into C.S. Lewis, and even all through all of his different stages, everything, his perception changes, but he definitely talks a lot about it being a test, being something that needs to be learned and needs to be understood, and something that is going to challenge faith. And then when it comes to Marcus Aurelius, a lot of him is just the basic acceptance of what's happening. It's like it's happening for a reason, and it's not necessarily this, it's not necessarily that. Um, but it just simply is. I've kind of broken down my stance into what I think is a pretty good standard form. If prosperity gospel is true, then natural evil can be justified. If all suffering, sin, and death is caused by evil, then natural evil can be justified. If all things natural can be evil, and evil is a matter of perception, then natural evil cannot be justified. Therefore, natural evil cannot be justified as a means to explain horrendous suffering. Now, I chose this picture to kind of show that and we'll move on to this next slide, because it kind of goes into my thought process and the one of the main reasons why I agree with C.S. Lewis as far as the different stages and the hope in the face of death. I was too one of those. I had my areas in life where I was I was in the military. I was in a combat situation, and you see that fog of war. You see that instance of um, kind of that darkness eventually being able to come into clarity. Uh, and those kind of situations really do kind of put things into perspective. Uh, and then the second picture that I have here goes along with both C.S. Lewis and Dr. Ballard. This is a very very rare photo of me as I was going through all of my cancer treatment. So I was actually diagnosed with cancer not that long ago and have been fortunate enough to be in full remission. And I can definitely agree with Dr. Ballard in seeing love in tragedy and seeing beauty in the darkness, and then seeing hope because of the amazing people that were around me and the people that weren't there in the first place but were there when all of it happened. Um, I I don't really see the idea of I don't really agree with David Hart as far as us being blinded to God's true nature because I think that we have the ability to see it all around us. Um, I understand that suffering happens, and I understand that I'm somebody that experienced suffering. Um, so it's one thing to kind of put a blanket statement on it. It's another thing to kind of go through it and live it and be able to uh, see those perspectives. Um, so it's one of those things to where natural evil can happen to anyone, blessed or not. And at the end of the day, it's important to remember what's important. And I think that through these experiences, we can see. I think that we can actually see God's true nature, um, and that when it comes to Marcus of things of that they just simply is, and that they're necessary in the larger order of things. I don't think that I necessarily agree with that. Um, so yeah, that is my thoughts on the problems with horrendous natural evil. I hope that you enjoyed this presentation. Thank you.